I've had this Make Noise Rene sequencer for a while. This is the version 1, so slightly cut down version, in fact, majorly cut down functionality compared to Rene version 2. However, the Rene version 1 can still be had for some pretty good prices on the second-hand market. I bought this recently and unfortunately, like others, had a few problems with the resistive touch plates. These ones here tend to work okay. I don't really have any issues with these. However, the touch plates here and here that are used to adjust the settings, I find a little bit awkward. Sometimes you press them and nothing happens. Other times you press them and it registers more than one press. And that makes it a bit awkward to use. Because of that, I haven't really used this particular sequencer that much compared to my others. So in this video, I'll attempt to hack this particular section here to improve upon it. Let's give it a go. At this point, I've got no idea if this hack's going to work, but let me talk you through what I think might work. So I'm thinking of replacing the resistive touch plates here with a small switch like this one. Now my current thinking is that I can bend the legs like I have here so they'll sit flat on the PCB and then drill some small holes here and here. So instead of pressing the resistive touch plate, you essentially press that little button. But first we have to figure out where to drill and how exactly will these switches fit from a physical perspective, but also what wiring is required to make it work. So I've taken the front panel off and I've just been seeing how things work. And it looks like when you touch one of the plates, so one of these two here, it creates a connection between ground and a pin, essentially, that goes to the main PCB here. It goes to the main PCB via these headers here. And I've traced the wires and I can see that the two top plates here, they connect to ground, which is this pin here, and then there is essentially a connection from one button to this one here, and then from another, well, I say button, touch plate to this one here. So I've put some bigger blobs of solder on, ready to attach some wires. So we now need to figure out exactly where do we need to drill the hole for these switches so they poke through nicely. I'm thinking they're just going to poke through like that. Can you see that on the camera? Yeah. So where do we need to drill the hole, and where will it fit? Essentially behind the panel. We also need to work out the pin out of these switches, so I'll do that in a second. But first of all, let's try and figure out where we can fit it. So I have my meter in continuity test mode, and I can see that when I push the button down, the switch is normally open and it closes the two side pins, so the pins on the side when the button is pressed. So therefore I'm thinking on the board it'd be really nice to have the buttons either side of the LEDs in the same line, and that'd look quite nice on the panel. It's basically be an extra hole on the side, wouldn't be too intrusive. So as you can probably see from the board there, if I had all four legs on, we'd probably end up shorting out some components here and there. So I have cut off two of the four legs, so we have more room to maneuver on the board. So next we'll drill out the faceplate. I now have two 3.5mm diameter holes in pretty much the right place, which is awesome. So in this place, people will still be able to use, or I will still be able to use, the touch plates if I want to, but where that doesn't work so well, I can use the switch, and the switches fit through just fine. Okay, so now to position the switches and do the wiring. So I've got the switches through the panel and in the position where they will be, and they work really nicely. They don't really affect the operation of the module at all, but they're going to work great. So now I'll figure out how to get some wiring done neatly underneath. I have my soldering iron here, and we're going to tin these legs first. That looks pretty good to me. Let's do the next one. Okay, time for the next one. So after a little bit of fiddling about, I now have the grounds soldered here, and then each of the other sides of the switches soldered here. That's fairly neat, and now we can think about routing it to the relevant places on the board. So things appear to be going okay so far. Cabling is relatively neat. The cable, by the way, is just Eurorack power cable. I just stripped a couple of cores out of it. So a couple of interesting learning points. So first of all, I got the wrong connection. So I thought it was the one up. For some reason I metered it incorrectly. So for the right hand switch, it's actually this one here. So I changed that over. Another thing that I did, I'm not too disappointed about it, but in order to get the right position for the switch on the front panel, when I drilled I actually cut through a trace. So I actually had to do a bit of trace repair there and work around it, so nothing too major. If you're interested in how I did the trace repair, just scrape back a bit of the coating to expose the copper, and then I used some motor wire like this, just basically burn a bit of the varnish off on both sides. So things appear to be working okay now, so I'm going to put it all back together. I'm going to put a couple of dabs of hot glue on this to just keep the cables nice and neat, and then I'm going to think about how I'm going to glue the base of these switches to the PCB. So the switches are wired up. Let's test the buttons. Oh yeah, that one does that one. Okay, looking pretty good. Okay, so I've got all the nuts back on, things are looking good. Still really pleased with the action of those switches. Now to get the best use out of all these, and just to give it a clean in general, I'm going to give this a clean with IPA, isopropyl alcohol. Make Noise actually recommend, if you're having problems with any of the touch plates, to give them a clean in this stuff. So here we go. If you're going to use IPA, make sure you use really high percentage. This is 99.9%. Alright, looking good. Time to put the knobs on. Now these knobs, they look like they're all the way down, but often they're not quite, and you just need to make sure you get the flat part lined up. So they go all the way down. They should be pretty much level, just a little bit up level from the bottom. I am really pleased with the way that came out. Those switches look really neat. They almost look like factory. The action's great. They don't affect the operation of the module. If you still want to use the touch plates, you can do, but I know I'll be using these switches from now on. I am really pleased with that. Alright, it's all put together. Time for a final test. Yep, those buttons looking good. Nice.